Hey guys, it's Angus, and today I'm going to give you a movie review of Lucy. So for everyone in the UK, Lucy is actually a really recent film as it came out in the 22nd of August. However, for America and Canada, they've had it for quite a long time, and they've had it for nearly a month. They got it on the 25th of July. So the story of Lucy is actually very unclear in terms of the story. It actually starts with a man and a woman talking, and basically she needs to deliver this package, which is a briefcase, and she doesn't want to do it, but this man trying to persuade her, and basically he handcuffs the briefcase to her, and she has no choice, and basically she actually gets captured, and she gets into this loads of mess, and they decide to cut open her stomach and actually put this drug inside her. So she doesn't actually know what it is. She actually finds out that this drug is an enhancing drug, and it actually increases the capacity of the brain. Sort of while this goes on and she has all this stuff, Morgan Freeman plays this scientist, and he explains how increasing the brain's capacity can have extraordinary effects. So for example, going to 40% to 50% of the brain's capacity can control matter and people's minds. And when somebody asks him what happens when somebody has 100% of their brain capacity, he has no idea, and I believe that's the whole story of Lucy. So when she takes it, she's a lot more intelligent, and it means that she can do so much more stuff. For example, she's a really good fighter, and she's really good with computers, and basically she sort of decides to take a huge amount of the drug, so she gets really intelligent, and her brain capacity increases to 40 to 50, and those are the stages of the films, and I quite like how they did that. Really bad problems I had with this film is the fact that it describes absolutely nothing and there's no explanation. It literally starts with two people talking, and there's no backstory or any explanation of the previous stuff that's happened before. It just jumps straight in. That can be quite a good benefit because there's no dragging on, but I sort of found it annoying because it didn't explain anything at all. Of course, the person to play this girl, Lucy, is Scarlett Johansson, and she's been in quite a lot of Marvel films, and I admit she does a good job for an action girl, and that's exactly what she needs to do in this film, so there's obviously no choice but Scarlett Johansson. I believe a lot of other people could have done it, but I believe she was the right person for the job. So Lucy gets captured, and she takes the drug, and she later discovers that it enhances her brain. So she tries to find more of it, and she needs to find this scientist who's done basically his whole life on the research of the drug. I also really like the way they made this story in some aspects because they make it really scientific. It's a little bit like Jurassic Park. They made it believable. Not really believable, but more it's not just happening, it actually can have an explanation, which I like. If they described the way the drug works for the story, I believe the story would have been much better. The only problem I really have with this film in terms of the story is that it's actually really like Limitless. About halfway through, I sort of thought it must be different, but it really is so similar. This person taking a drug and it enhances their brain, like they're more intelligent. I'm not really sure if it is a rip-off, if the story of Lucy was written before Limitless, but it just really is so much like Limitless. So of course the professor to play for a scientist is Morgan Freeman, and I'll admit he does a good job, but in terms of his acting, I don't think he does. Now, the reason I'm saying this is because Morgan Freeman does a good scientist, but to be honest, the way he performs just isn't interesting because he's just the same character, and I've seen that in all of his previous films. He is a good actor, but I find that he just didn't do a right job in this film because he sort of plays the scientist, and there's really nothing special about it. Of course, Scarlett Johansson is the face of this film, and she did a good job for the leading role. So there's quite a few things I actually really like about this film. One of the first things I liked about this film was the visual effects. I'm not going to lie, I don't think this film really could have been done without the visual effects. I don't really think it would have been 80% as good without them. It probably could have been done, but I really felt that the visual effects really enhanced the experience of the film, and it made it much more scientific and a lot more entertaining. One thing I was really glad about this film is the original music. I believe Eric did a really fantastic job. There's a whole album dedicated to the original music. Not many films use original music, they just use other people's music, but this is completely pre-made for this film, and it really is actually fantastic. Some of the themes of the music is actually really weird and quite unusual for this type of film, but I actually really like it for some reason, and it's kind of weird why I like it, because it's a type of music that I don't really usually like. There's a really good range of music, so there's a lot of action and sci-fi music and also some quite creepy music. Now, I don't really think that makes sense to some people that haven't seen this film, but I feel it really suits the film. Probably the best film, of course, is the concept. I really like the concept of the film, how they take a drug and it increases the brain's capacity. Now, unfortunately, the concept's really good, but the story just isn't good enough, and I believe it could have been much better. Also, there's just not enough backstory. I usually find when there's a backstory, it answers a lot of questions in terms of the character's personality and story, but I believe they just didn't include that, and because of that it made it more confusing, and it didn't make it as good as it could have been. The good thing about this film is the theme of it and the genre. It's really good for action and sci-fi, and just those two. I really like it when films mix those two together because it makes it really action-packed, and of course sci-fi, so it makes it really good for the best of both worlds. Another really good thing about this film is the way they really entertain you throughout the entire film. Now, it's only an hour and a half, but I really felt that I was never bored in the film, and that there was never any scenes that dragged on or were completely unnecessary. Now, there are quite a few things that I didn't like about this film, and one of the first things is the cinematography, and this is something that I don't really mention in films in terms of negativities. I didn't like the cinematography is because I felt in a lot of scenes that it was too up close to the face. Now, that really doesn't really seem a bad negative, but I felt it just didn't enhance the entire experience, because when the cinematography is quite far out, I believe there's a lot more to see, but I felt the cinematography was too close to the people, and it meant that it didn't capture enough of the film. Quite a lot of TV series and films have a lot of scenes where the cinematography is up close and it works in those moments, but I felt in this film it just didn't work properly. This is only a small problem I have in the film, and it's not really that bad. It's the name, Lucy. I don't really think that it's the proper name. It could have had so much better names, but I just went for Lucy, and although it is based around the entire character, I felt they could have done maybe a better job just with the name. And that gets onto my third negativity, which is the way they completely evolved it around Scarlett Johansson. So the budget for Lucy is $40 million, so they've probably shedded out quite a lot for Scarlett Johansson, so I don't really blame them for using Scarlett Johansson throughout the film, but I believe they could have used more characters, and I don't really like it when a film evolves around one character, because it just feels like they've just spent the entire budget on that one person and they're not using it on anyone else. I really would have liked it if they shared it with other characters, because then it would have been more interesting, and I was getting a little bit bored of Scarlett Johansson. While I really liked the concept of the idea, I felt in some moments it just got completely ridiculous. This was the same case with Transcendence. The concept was really excellent, but it just completely went over the top. So if you want to watch my movie review of Transcendence, then you can just find it here. Another thing I didn't like about the film Lucy is the way it ends on a confusing note. Now, I'm not going to spoil it, but the way they ended it just didn't really make any sense, because I just can't imagine a sequel, Lucy 2, and I'm not sure if they were hinting at a sequel or not. Unfortunately, another bad thing about this film is the way they edited it. So this film just isn't meant to be for IMAX or 3D. I did watch this in IMAX, and there wasn't really any scenes that were suited for IMAX or any 3D. Yes, if you are thinking about watching this film in IMAX or 3D, I just wouldn't recommend it. Watching it in IMAX, of course, is a great experience because of the huge screen, but I felt that it just wasn't necessary and there wasn't anything special in it. So overall, I would give Lucy 7.4 out of 10. Overall, I think Lucy is a good sci-fi and action film. It has a really fantastic concept, but I just think it could have been better. It has a really strong performance from the leading role, Scarlett Johansson, and of course there's other good things like really good visual effects and great music. So that was quite an in-depth review of Lucy. If you did enjoy it, be sure to give it a thumbs up, and thanks for watching. Discoveries and methods of the drug that didn't make sense. So the film Lucy actually starts very unclear in terms of the story. It's basically car destroyed it. Can increase her brain's capacity, and she sort of takes quite a lot of TV series and series. So she tries to find more of it, and she needs to find the scientist. There's really, as I said, other people could have done it, but I believe she did a good role for the leading role. Shit. There's quite a few things I liked about this film. One of the first things was the visual effects. I believe the film couldn't really been done without the visual effects. It probably could have, but that doesn't make sense. So I'm not gonna lie, I think the film couldn't have really been done without visual effects. Another really good thing about this film is the fact that it really keeps you entertained. I was never bored in the film, and I never felt that any of the scenes dragged on. Shit. There's people shouting outside my house. Another bad thing I didn't like about Lucy is... Wait, that doesn't make sense.